Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
What are your thoughts on staff training? I mean, for most of us, we see it as needful. Of course, you have to do some training for your team or they'll have no idea what they're doing. But beyond basic training for the job, what about investing in further training, whether it be technical or clinical CE for providers or assistants, or sales or executive training for administrative staff? Well, a question, or really more of a consideration that I've heard frequently in my career is I don't want to invest a bunch of money into somebody and then have them not work out, or they work out and they leave. And I completely understand. Why invest 5, 10, or tens of thousands of dollars into somebody only to see them to turn out to be a non-performing employee or leave 6 months later after being a performing employee? We all agree this is not a good idea. But that said, one of the common threads you'll see with most successful MGE clients is they do invest in training their team. They invest a lot, and it shows in overall productivity, low turnover at key positions, and a general lack of stress. So the question is, how can you intelligently invest in staff training so that you see growth and stability in your team rather than getting burned? And that's what I want to talk about in this week's episode. I want to cover how to determine if a person is a good candidate to invest in, when to invest, and when not to, and provide a few ideas to help you phase this out and end up with a trained, high-performing team. My name is Jeff Bloomberg, and I'm your host. And probably the best place to start would be to look at phases of training. So let's start with the first phase. This would be basic training or onboarding for somebody. Basically what you have to do with somebody in order to make sure that they can work in your practice. So what might that consist of? And this you have to do with everybody. This would be a basic understanding of the practice. What's the practice's mission? What are we doing here? Where is everything? Or where is everything? Where's my cubby? Where's my desk? Where's this located? This is basic stuff. They'd also have to know basic office policy, things like payroll, what to do if they have a conflict with another team member, etc. And there's probably going to be some training in there on OSHA or HIPAA. And once they move into their position, there's going to have to be some positional training, some position-specific training. And it may relate to the software you're using even. Maybe they used EagleSoft in the past practice they were in, and they're doing collections for you now, and now you use Dentrix or Dentrix Ascend. There's going to have to be basic training like that. But most of this training beyond the time you're having to spend with this individual, and you can always save money by recording training and things like this so that they can watch it later so you're not doing it newly every time. But these are not expensive forms of training. We'll call them low impact training. This is one of the reasons we initially created our online platform, DDS Success. It was, this is my shameless plug, folks, but initially it was for docs that couldn't bring their entire team to a seminar, so they could have them watch a video which had bits and pieces of what we teach down in the office online. It's expanded since then, and there's a lot more on there, especially the positional stuff. But that's the idea. It doesn't cost you a lot to sit somebody at a desk and have them watch a video and answer some quizzes. It costs you their hourly salary. I had trouble saying that. But beyond that, it's not really costing you anything because you're paying a flat subscription fee. The main thing you're looking for in this phase while you're training somebody like this, and I want to see this quickly, assuming they know the ropes, the basic ideas of how things are done in the practice, and I'm bringing them along, I want to see, can this person actually produce? Because you can kind of mess this balance up a little bit. You could throw somebody in the staff lounge reading manuals and books all day and watching videos all day and not have them do any work. And then 1 to 2 weeks later, you find out that they're really not capable of producing anything. Well, that's not workable. The initial day or two might be getting them somewhat genned in on how the practice runs, how things work, the most important policies they have to be aware of. But I would want to see the person at least doing something to contribute within the first few days. I don't care what that might be. It might be helping straighten up the front desk or stuffing envelopes. It doesn't matter. I need to have them do something and see, A, can they follow direction, and B, can they actually understand what I'm asking them to do? If I'm giving them simple instructions and they mess it up continuously within the first week, this person probably is not going to work out. And this is where you have to be, I've talked about this before, you have to be able to have a general idea of how long it would take to get somebody to understand something. And you're going to develop this over time as you've employed people. You might find that some people are quick studies and they're ready to roll in a week and they're doing all kinds of stuff. And then you'll find some people take longer, they're 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but you find the average is around 2. So then let's say the average person takes about 2 weeks to get up and running. If you have somebody and it's 4 or 6 weeks later and they're still not able to do basic things, it's probably not going to work. They're not picking things up quick enough to make it financially viable for your practice. So this is where you have to have an idea of this. But early on, sure, there's going to be the first few days getting them somewhat aware of what's happening in the practice and aware of the most important policies, but you want to see them doing something. That's why it's funny. And again, this is something I've referenced in prior episodes. What most practices will do, I mean, obviously, if it's an assistant, they're going to help in the back. They'll do sterilization. They're doing simple stuff. Now, if they have some skills, they might be chairside. Great. But at the front, especially when you're hiring somebody with little to no experience, the usual place this person is put is answering the phone, which, they've worked for the office for 5 days and you now have them answering the phone. That is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea because you're spending all this money on marketing. And even if you're not, just the awareness that people have of your practice gets destroyed when this person answers the phone and has no idea what they're talking about. That would be the last place I would put a newer employee, is answering my phone. That is a very bad idea. The person answering your phone is your partner in marketing. So what would you do with this newer administrative employee, for example, just to see if they can actually do something that you've asked them to do? Well, a simple thing, and I've mentioned this before, is I would have them do some reactivation, because it's not difficult to teach somebody how to make calls to schedule hygiene patients. It's actually not difficult at all. And if they can get on the phone and make some calls and get some people scheduled, maybe they're not going to be as good as somebody who's been doing it for a long time. But that is sort of where the rubber hits the road. I can see, can this person actually produce something? I mean, and to my mind, even if I hired somebody with experience, I probably would do this anyway, because I haven't experienced anything with them. They've told me they've had experience. What if the experience was bad experience? What if the doctor they were working for didn't have the standards I had as far as the expectations they had of an employee? I wasn't in that prior working environment or environments, so I have to see with my own eyes that this person can actually do something useful and effective. So you probably have a considerable number of inactive patients if you're the average general dental practice. Put them on the phone and have them reactivate some patients. Now, if you put them on the phone and after a day or two, maybe they're studying part of the day and they're on the phone part of the day, after a few days, they can't schedule anybody, or a day or two, they're probably not worth investing even your basic training in at that point, because now it's a steep uphill climb with a headwind that you're running up against, because the person can't be effective. Can't or won't. They're just not effective. They might be a super nice person, and this is where this throws us off from time to time. We hire somebody, they're really nice, they're very pleasant, but we give them a basic task to do and they just can't perform it, despite the normal amount of effort we would expect to train somebody to do this basic task. And this is the other thing too. In a lot of cases, the person who's doing the training, the office manager, is also doing 3 or 4 other things. So they don't have time to mess around with this. This person needs to pick up quickly. Now, obviously, they don't have to be geniuses, but you need somebody who can at least pick up basic things. So you've taught them how to make some reactivation calls, and they're spending part of their day doing the training for your practice. Maybe they're watching DDS Success. Maybe they're getting trained on EagleSoft or Dentrix or Open Dental or whatever. But can they actually do what's asked of them, these simple tasks? If they can't, then I'm not going to even go any further than that. It's just not going to work out. If they can, now I look at investing in them a little bit more to actually give them a specific task or duty in the practice. So if we walk this forward, or backwards rather, what are we doing? We bring somebody in, we're teaching them the basics, we're seeing if they can actually help us. Let's say I'm an understaffed practice and I'm the office manager and I have no other staff. Well, then I'm probably not having them sit and read for hours and hours and do reactivation. They may just be helping me at the front with simple tasks that are time consuming but don't require my skill level to do. I can teach them how to confirm patients that didn't confirm via text. And again, I probably would not have them confirm the major productive procedures on the doctor's schedule. I'd have them confirm hygiene patients or simple stuff, right? So I'm using them to help while we're working to see, can this person actually produce anything while they're doing their training? If they can, now I'm ready to give them a job. So let's say I give them whatever that job might be, scheduling. Well, now I'm going to invest into training them for scheduling. But again, it might be, this is again why we have things like DDS Success. It'll be simple training. And I'll give it to them bit and piece. Maybe they're scheduling hygiene first. Then I'm teaching them how the doctor's schedule works. And obviously they're going to have to understand the software so that I can get them up and running and make them more valuable. But they've already proven that they're worth me investing that time into them because they've been able to, they've shown me rather that they can actually be effective. That to me is important. So I'm feeding them the training in phases based on the fact that they are effective and that they're applying what I'm teaching them. If I'm teaching them how to do a simple task, how to do let's say a reactivation call, and I show them something simple. Look, you have to look at the age of the patient. You don't want to call a 14-year-old. You're going to call their parents. And then they call the 14-year-old somehow, right? Or ask for the 14-year-old when they call the house when mom answers the phone. That's just going to be weird, right? So maybe one time they mess up. If this is a continuous thing, this becomes a problem for me because, again, the person can't follow simple instructions. Do you see? So now I've given them a job. Now I'm giving them their basic positional training and seeing if they can be effective on that. Assuming, because again, it's more of an investment of my time if I'm the office manager. Okay. And then they're rolling along, they're starting to produce, and you can also apply this with existing staff. Let's say you have a team, you have a treatment coordinator, you have a schedule coordinator, you have a receptionist. I'm going to give them more training, but I'm going to keep that training simple unless they've proven to be super effective over time. But let's say they've been with me for 60 days. I'm probably not going to invest a ton in them until I see that I can teach them something and they become more effective. Then I can think about maybe investing more time and money into this person. But that's sort of the sequence I'm going to run. I want to see, can the person be a contributive member of the team before I invest tons and tons and tons of time and effort into this person. And like I said, if there are things, we have the online platform, and I've mentioned that 3 times. I apologize, but there was a reason we did this, which have a treatment coordinator, positional training and scheduler, etc. But there are things that are going to be specific to your practice, only your practice. And you could teach the people that over and over and over again, especially if you've been around for a while and you're a manager, you've probably trained multiple people on the same job and you've said the same things and you go, gosh, this is just getting old. I would record it. It doesn't have to be fancy, folks. It can be very simple. A tripod and an iPhone, and you save it. And then you can even you can put it on a cloud drive, or you can invest in a little learning management system, which some of them are super cheap to put the videos up there to have the person watch. And you just have an iPad in the staff lounge. That can make your life a heck of a lot easier in the long term, especially for things that you find that you're repetitively teaching people over and over and over and over again. All right, so now let's move on to the next phase of training. Now we're going to invest some money in this person. So what are some of the things I'm going to want to see? This person is productive, absolutely no doubt. But then keep in mind, and I meant to mention this earlier, if I'm going to move a person onto a specific job, that job has to be defined. It can't be front desk person, because if I have 3 people at the front, I have no idea who's being effective at what. They have to have an area or zone of responsibility. I've talked about this in prior episodes. We teach this on the MGE Power program. I'll put a link to that on the episode webpage as far as how to organize your practice. But you have to have a division of labor or you don't know who's really doing anything. If you look at the functions that occur at the front desk, there's scheduling, there's insurance, there's verification. Well, that's also insurance. But there's scheduling, collections, verification, or insurance rather. I keep saying that. Treatment coordinator, etc. So you would want the person to have an area of zone of responsibility because then you can staticize this. That's how you're going to measure their performance. So if I have a schedule coordinator and I've made them the schedule coordinator, they came up, they showed that they could be productive. I've trained them to do the schedule. And now my schedule is super productive, efficient. I don't have holes in the schedule. It's scheduled the way according to our scheduling policy. And I'm keeping a statistic to measure this, i.e. overall office production. And production is going up. This person's doing a good job. This is a no doubt productive person and it's sustained. It's not like we had one great month and one bad month. I'm having good months. This person's showing that they are a contributive member of the team. So now I'm looking at, and they want to move up. They want to do better. So now what would I want to make sure was in place before I would invest a bunch of money into them? So fine, obviously they're productive. And they've obviously shown that the training that I have given them has stuck. They've learned. Well, let me give you kind of an example. So with the MGE Power program, we train a doctor and an office manager. So the office manager is usually somebody the most responsible. It's not always starting out as the office manager. We've had doctors who've pulled their lead assistant and asked them if they wanted to train as the office manager. They became the office manager, or maybe it was their treatment coordinator, might have been their hygienist, might have been their spouse. And they've had a sustained record of productivity, so they're worth investing because the office manager training is, extraordinarily expensive. So in that case, it makes sense because you have somebody has shown that they can do a good job, or that has shown rather that they can do a good job. And this is the same thing, in the larger practices, as I mentioned with MGE clients, they'll then have additional junior staff. Maybe they have their manager, but they have their treatment coordinator. They maybe have a back office manager, a front office manager. These folks are also getting trained as executives as the practice grows because they can manage more things, which again is helpful if you end up losing key personnel and you have several good trained personnel. It makes the hit a heck of a lot easier to absorb than if you just have one great person. So they do that. And also, if they're looking at acquiring additional locations, that front office manager might become the office manager at location number 2. But these folks have all shown that they can produce. So if I'm going to invest in somebody, I've got a treatment coordinator and they're really lighting the world on fire and they've been very good, but they want to do more. How am I going to determine that it's okay to spend money on this person? Well, obviously they've been super productive, as I've been saying, as proven by statistic. They learn and have shown that they can learn. Whatever training I've given them, they've applied well. I'm also going to check if they're willing to be around for a while. They're not that can manifest in a couple different ways. Let's say you have an associate doctor, for example, and you're looking at leveling this person up and you want them to take an FMR course and you're going to spend $25,000, $30,000 on this course. Well, you want to find out, is this person planning on being here for a while? Are they trying to get into a perio program and planning on leaving in 6 months if they get accepted? I probably wouldn't do FMR training with that individual because there's a chance they could leave. But if they're into it, look, I love this place. I enjoy it, being paid well. I love the staff. I love the team. You and I get along great. I'm planning on being here as long as you'll have me. Well, okay, that's good. But if I have an assistant who's looking to get into hygiene school, well, maybe I'm not going to invest a ton of training in them yet. Now, that being said, with hygiene school, with the current situation with the number of hygienists, I'd probably have it set up where they came back to me when they finished hygiene school. But if you get the general idea here, if there isn't a thought or a concept that they may be leaving for any reason in a short period of time, this productive employee, and by short I mean 6 months, a year, I may not invest a ton of money in training them because I'm going to lose that money in the event whatever circumstance they're looking at works out. So that's what's important to me. I want to make sure they're going to be around for a while. Now, I've seen some people do this, and this is something you'd have to talk to your attorney about. I've seen it where if you're going to invest $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 into training somebody, because we have clients that do that and it pays off, trust me, then most likely what they'll do is have them sign some form of a promissory note, meaning that they're going to work for you for a certain period of time. And if they leave before then, for any reason, they owe you that money. And this is something your attorney would have to draft. And you can maybe have it prorate over time. You're going to pay X amount of dollars to train somebody, an associate, for example, in an FMR course. Well, they agree to work with you, or work for you rather, for 2 or 3 years, and you're going to prorate that over time. Because that's, 1 year, after year 1, a third is gone. After year 2, they only owe you a third. After year 3, they owe you nothing if they leave. This protects you a little bit, and this is something your attorney would have to draft. But at least it puts it there that, look, we're planning on working together for a while, which is important if you're going to pour all that kind of money into them. And even then, maybe this isn't as applicable with an associate doctor because these courses, they may be expensive, but they're shorter. But let's say, I'll give you an example again from MGE. Office manager training can take 18 months. It's 600 hours, 78 days of training. Well, let's say we're 2 months in and it's not working out. The office manager all of a sudden turns out to not be productive anymore, or they've decided they want to do something else or whatever. This is why when we price our programs, we're going for a product. If I have somebody who starts office manager training and they're 3/4 of the way through, or heck, even 7/8 of the way through, and they quit, or they have to be fired for egregious, mistakes, we don't charge the client again to train the office manager. Obviously, they're not going to recover their travel time and time they paid this employee to train, but they're not going to pay for the training again. They're just going to pay for new materials. because we're going for a product. We do that. It's why we do when we have clients who are, larger practices and they're looking at multiple offices or a bigger practice. We have a program which is like an all-inclusive 3-year program where they can train as many of their team members as they want on whatever they want, with limitations. And even then, that's the idea is, I've hired somebody, they're my front desk manager, they're doing really well, and I want to train them as an executive. And I send them to MGE, and then they turn out to not work out after 6 months. Well, you just train another one. You got 3 years to train people. So we do that only because we're after the product. That's the main thing. If someone finishes their office manager training and then 2 years later they leave, well, that's on the office. That's not on us, right? They finish their program. But the idea is even while they're training, I would still make sure that the person is still performing. It's not like they performed well. Now I've invested money in this training program, so therefore they are no longer required to perform. I'm going to keep checking on their performance because if their performance sags to the point where it's a problem, I'm not going to continue the investment, even though I've paid for a program. I don't have to pay for plane tickets continuously. If it's not working out, I need to get somebody who's going to work out. So yes, you have to train, especially in a service business, because your team is your biggest asset. I mean, if you look at, and I hate comparing healthcare to a restaurant, but I just want to give you a point of comparison. How many times have you been to a good restaurant? Or maybe good is the wrong word to use here, but let's say how many times have you been to a restaurant where the food was good, but the service was bad? And you walked out, you weren't completely high on that restaurant because food was good, but you waited an hour to get it. So service is critical in a service business. It's 50% of the components. You can be a great dentist. You can do all kinds of amazing things. But if you don't know what you're doing as an executive or your team is just not with it, that will affect your ability to produce and perform, even though you're an excellent clinician. So in a service business, your team is critical. So you do need to train them. But that said, you want to do it smartly and not waste time or money. Anyway, I know a little bit of a shorter episode this week. We're gearing up for our big yearly state of the industry next week. That's going to be longer. But I hope this helps in any event. I hope it helps you take a look at the training methodology you've been using, and it helps you figure out a more effective way to do it. If you'd like to find out more about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. I also put the links to DDS Success and the MGE Power Program on the episode webpage. Folks, have a great week, and we'll see you at the next episode.